and welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. Matt Dudek will not be joining us today, but joining us instead, and appropriately so, considering the crazy week Detroit Mercy has had, is a recuperating Karic Jones.
Recuperating indeed.
Yes.
Hopefully back on my feet for that game at Oakland later this week.
Yes, and yes, Karic. If you follow Karic at Karic Jones _Jones on Twitter, Karic had some surgery last week, and he's still kind of laid up a little bit. Still sounds like you're kind of sore, but clearly on the road to recuperation. So
Yep.
That's good. So and of course you can find the podcast on Twitter as well at Horizon RT. And why don't we just get into it? I mean, this is the big news this week is that at long last, I was going to say Detroit Mercy's national nightmare is over, but that just complicates things. So finally, the NCAA finally lifted the APR ban on Detroit Mercy. Finally. We've been waiting for this since probably forever. December. And it's funny because they haven't even officially announced it yet. It was we got it was a tweet from Don Owen from the Northern Kentucky Tribune of all people, who posted this over the weekend. And it's so according to his sources, and and I'm assuming this is correct, that the APR ban for Detroit Mercy is at long last finally lifted. So Detroit Mercy will be able to, if they get their shit together, power through and participate in a tournament. Yay!
Yay! A tournament.
I'm going to venture to guess, given how things have been going, just the Horizon League tournament.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an NCAA tournament.
It is definitely not. Man,
maybe Mike Davis will pay out of pocket for him to play in the CBI.
Yeah, wouldn't that require them to actually have a record that's better than 2-10? Because right now it ain't it.
No.
So that was the good, and so that was they did win on Saturday. They beat SIU Edwardsville, although it seemed like during spots in the game they were kind of trying to give that 20-something point lead away, which is kind of weird. But I
think SIU Edwardsville is really bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so but that's not even really the real news. So in the midst of all of this, man, I'm still trying to get over this, and I think you could maybe you could provide some insight on this, because this blows me away. Detroit Mercy lost to Northeastern earlier in the week, and Dan Hasty said, of course, friend of the show, Dan Hasty, got to shout that out. He had Mike Davis on for the post game interview, and Mike Davis just, I don't know what the hell happened. Dude went off. He didn't say, I think, as I understand it, he didn't say he needed better players. He needed different players. To be clear, he did say that. I wanted to, because I know he's clearly been very unhappy with the execution on this Detroit Mercy team. Which is seriously problematic, especially when you got a guy like Antoine Davis on your roster and you're going into conference play 2-10. How does that even work? I mean, I get all the bye, and by the way, they still have a bye game left. They still got to go to Gonzaga. So somebody has to. And Karic, I'm glad you're here, because you can potentially explain to me what's going on in the halls of Callahan Hall, because I'm kind of struggling with the whole concept here. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but it just seems like it's just not clicking.
I think there's that. I think he unfortunately, he being Mike Davis, had to bring in a lot of guys who are kind of fringe D1 guys, and I think he's got the wrong expectation for him. Um, Chris Brandon's been somebody he's known for years, but at this level, Chris Brandon is a rebounding and defensive machine. He's not going to score a lot.
No.
Bo, not a bad player, but he's going to rebound. He's going to make some defensive stops, not going to score a lot. Moore has been scoring, no pun intended, more and more often, but
he did. Yeah, his productivity has gone up. Yes, that's definitely
not,
true.
For someone who plays, 30 minutes a game, he doesn't do enough. When you have a career high of 12 points and you average 34 minutes a game, that's a problem. Brad Calipari in flashes has looked really, really good. He looked really good that game. Antoine was out. He had 20 points. I felt like the game against Toledo, Antoine was out, might have been the best game they played all year, because they weren't just trying to get Antoine the ball.
That's an interesting. That's kind of an interesting dynamic too, because we didn't really talk about. We didn't talk. We talked a little bit last. Well, obviously Matt and Kyle Craven, because I was out last week, talked a little bit about the game against Toledo, in which Antoine Davis was out with the flu and arguably and inexplicably probably played their best game all year, even though they did lose. Toledo's a pretty good team. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I'm a little confused by the fact that the team can kind of come together minus Antoine and go toe-to-toe with a team like Toledo, and then come back the next game against Northeastern and completely collapse. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I think they really practiced those sets for Calipari, and he shot really well. They shot god awful against Northeastern.
Yeah.
It was bad, but I think Davis has a point on, to a degree. A lot of times, maybe his guys don't show enough effort. I think it's a combination of he's got really high expectations.
I'm sure he does, yeah.
And maybe he doesn't have the guys that can meet the expectations. But that's
the other problem. Those are his guys. I mean, if he's gonna bitch about it, he's kind of got nobody to blame but himself at the moment. I mean, truthfully, right. These are his guys.
And this is the guy running around saying that this APR ban really killed recruiting.
It might, which might be true as well.
I
don't doubt that might be the case, given the fact that if you have a recruit and then you have that APR ban sitting there, and basically you're telling a recruit, hey, come to Detroit Mercy. There's a potential you're not going to be able to do jack squat in the next first year, but come on in anyway. But you'll still be playing with Antoine Davis. Apparently, that's not a selling point at this point, which is, I don't understand that either. But it just seems to me that it's just this non-conference for Detroit Mercy it's really kind of fallen flat for them. I don't know, and if you look at them, I'm not sure that even with Antoine Davis and emerging some of the other guys, because you still have a BJ Maxwell who's still probably trying to get up to speed. You still have.
Well, he's out.
He is out again.
He's got he dislocated his shoulder against Notre Dame. I don't even know if he's going to be back.
Oh, that's good. Great. So okay, never mind. And yeah, let's throw another log on the fire, because then you have. And BJ Maxwell was going to be wasn't he kind of the guy, going to be kind of the guy to help shoulder the load with Antoine?
Yeah, he was going to be their primary ball carrier.
And now he's not. And now we're back to square one.
Well, now they got LeGrand carrying the ball, who's not really a point guard. He's like a stretch three. and he's fun to watch,
Yeah.
but he's not really doesn't do much. Example, he started the game
Mm-hmm.
against Northeastern, played 21 minutes. His only stats were 3 assists, a turnover, and a -18.
Ugh, dude, that is
And that is your second point guard option. Just looking over that Northeastern game, obviously a lot of things for coach to be mad about. Just got torched rebounding by a
yeah.
lot smaller team, 43-29. Normally, Detroit Mercy does pretty good gang rebounding.
That is
Detroit's best scoring run was 6.
Jesus.
And their largest lead was 1, where Northeastern's largest lead was 13.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That seems like that's going to be problematic for them. And I don't. How does Detroit Mercy overcome that, knowing what they have coming down the pike with the Horizon League schedule, where you're looking at. I mean, the kind of the parallels I see right now with Detroit Mercy is IUPUI, who is struggling just as bad, and also have some pieces in place that, with Marcus Burke and Jalen Manette, but they are also struggling just as mightily as Detroit Mercy is. Now, mind you, of course, they're obviously in a little different situation because they're working with an interim head coach. But still the struggle remains. And if you want to talk about kind of the fringe D1 recruits and everything, I mean, you look at a team like Cleveland State, a team that basically kind of got put together on the fly in July. And I like Cleveland State better than I do Detroit Mercy at this point.
I think it's a little early for that.
Here's the reason why I say, and I'm going to segue into this because obviously Cleveland State has their own issues. Their scoring is their offense is absolutely atrocious. They basically handle the ball like Edward Scissorhands. But damn, that is probably the defense. Their defense right now is probably the best defense one of the best defenses in the Horizon League. And if you go up, I'm saying this. Because obviously the first weekend of the Horizon League schedule, you have Cleveland State is going to UIC and IUPUI. I would not be surprised to see Cleveland State go at least 1-1 on that road trip. I think that the defense alone for Cleveland State really they're definitely going to clamp down on IUPUI. I don't know about UIC. We'll talk a little bit about them later because they've got some new they're back at full strength. But if you think about it, you look at Cleveland State if you go look at a theoretical matchup between Cleveland State it's not going to be theoretical too much longer, but a theoretical matchup between Cleveland State and Detroit Mercy, Cleveland State has to clamp down on Antoine Davis and that's it. They'll put Trago Million on Antoine Davis and see what happens. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I think Trago Million is probably good. He's good. His defense, he's good enough to be an defensive guy in the Horizon League. I think he's good. I think his defense over the non-conference has been good enough to warrant that conversation.
And they kept up with DePaul.
They did, even after this has to be a school record. So for those of you who didn't see the Cleveland State DePaul game, Cleveland State turned the ball over 20 times. 20 freaking times. It has to be a school record. I was pulling my hair out the whole time, and I'm like, oh my God, please let this be better. And the whole first half, it just didn't. They averaged a turnover a minute. It was so insane. But again, this is the thing with Cleveland State, and they turned around, they flipped the switch, and they clamped down on Dennis Gates had them clamp down on the defense, and they fought back. I think they were down by as many as 16 in that game. They came back to tie the game, but unfortunately, obviously, their offense, as I've mentioned, is not great. And when I say not great, it's it's pretty much hot and cold, mostly cold. But they tied that ball game against DePaul, and this is kind of an example of the type of thing they've done previously. But again, those damn turnovers and the bad shooting just gets in the way. But I think because of that, because of the defense, I think that's going to get. I think that keeps them out of the cellar. Honestly, I think if all Detroit Mercy currently has is Antoine Davis and maybe one other person show up periodically, I think Cleveland State beats them. Maybe not at Callahan Hall, but definitely at the Wolstein Center. I think Cleveland State is not the worst team in the conference.
Oh, I don't think
God.
Detroit Mercy is either. I wasn't kidding this week. I told Parker and Dudek there that I'd take Detroit Mercy to finish in the top 3 if the team that showed up against Toledo plays every game.
Unfortunately, the team that showed up against Toledo didn't have Antoine Davis.
Well, I think there's the point.
That's so weird too. That we're even having that conversation, because it's like,
Matt says it all the time, but it wouldn't shock me if someone came in 4 years from now and said that Mike Davis was spoiling Antoine Davis, because some of the shot selection's horrible. He scores a lot, and like yesterday was great and he was on.
Yeah.
But that whole time that he was like getting hot, no one else did anything.
And that's problematic.
4 people spread themselves out across the court and like held onto the ball when they got it.
And that therein lies the problem, because at this moment in time, as I mentioned before, basically in all honesty, the only thing that's you're looking at a situation where every Horizon League team has already seen Antoine Davis already. They saw him all last year. That's what they're game planning for. They're not game planning for anybody else. They're going to say, you need to beat us with anybody but Antoine Davis. They absolutely would give Antoine Davis his shots and get him his points, but somebody else has got to step up for them. And unless that's the case, and I don't, the way their game plan is currently set up with him in the lineup, I don't see it.
I don't see it consistently. I think that's the biggest issue, is it's not.
Yeah,
it's not consistent. If they could
consistently, even in the non-conference, even in the non-conference schedule, we saw it. The inconsistency. They only won. They only won 2 whole games in the entire non-conference, and most of those games were not even close. Now, mind you, a lot of those games are bye games, but some of them weren't, and some of them were just inexplicable dumpster fires for some reason.
No, I mean the Eastern Michigan game. Eastern Michigan's a weird team because they don't have anybody local, but they've done really well all season.
Mm-hmm.
They're poorly coached. All he does is scream. But they have a really good record. And their first bad loss was to MSU this week. Do I think they're going to compete in the MAC? Absolutely not.
No, not with the teams that are in the MAC right now. No way. Absolutely not.
Not with Kent State and Toledo rolling around. That's
not at all. I mean, that's a pretty stacked MAC. We've talked about the MAC a lot, mostly in envy. But yeah, that's definitely. But yeah, they the top half of the top teams in the MAC are definitely worth watching. I mean, we've seen them all. We've seen Toledo. We've seen Kent State. We've seen, Bowling Green probably is in that conversation as well. However, I will point out that Toledo did run into Wright State did beat Toledo this weekend. And I think that was for Wright State. I think that was a. I'm sorry. And I know we mentioned whether or not Loudon Love was out. This was his first game back. I'm sorry. I did not mention that. Yeah, this was Loudon Love's first game back. But and it showed. So now that Wright State's back full strength, they were able to beat they beat Toledo on the road too, I might add, because I know there was a little bit of a conversation about them being Wright State being Western Kentucky, although they were at the Nutter Center. This is a road win. It's a road win against a good MAC team like Toledo, which makes.
I can tell you how they did it too.
And
looking at the box score.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out myself. Well, I think we know how, but go ahead.
Spencer Littleson had 7 points.
Yeah, Spencer Littleson, who by the way is, if I'm not mistaken, is Toledo's best scorer.
Yep, he's their best scorer, and it's interesting because everyone else that starts was in double digits, but
yeah,
he went 2 for 6.
Yeah,
and a big 1 for 3 from downtown, and that's where he makes his money.
Yeah, they kept him off. They kept him from the arc. They kept him from scoring. That was their game plan. Contain Spencer Littleson. Like everybody else gets what they and that was the difference in the game, really.
Well, like Tanner Holden had a day.
Yeah, that's true.
9 for 10.
Absolutely, yeah. It's crazy because last year when we talked about Northern Kentucky, we talked about all these weapons that they had, and every time we turned around, there was a new one. Same thing here with Wright State. First you got when Loudon Love goes down, you have Grant Basile come in and just play his ass off. Then you get you bring in somebody like a James Manns and he goes off. And then in this game, Tanner Holden went off. So it's Wright State's scary. Wright State is a scary, scary team, and I think and it kind of speaks to kind of the kind of the chasm between the top of the Horizon League and the bottom of the Horizon League at this point. It really does.
Yeah, because I mean they beat a really good team that 4 out of 5 starters are in double digits, and that the thing I noticed with Toledo that U of D was having such a hard time with is how big they are.
Yeah,
and the fact that the center and the power forward both will step out and shoot threes.
Yeah,
that's the thing that's separating them from any other team in the MAC, because Kent State doesn't have that, Ohio doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo did when Nate Oates was there.
Mm-hmm.
They have that big center, Konopke, who's able to step out and shoot threes, and then Marlon Jackson's their primary ball carrier.
Marion Jackson.
With Littleson and Alderson pretty much standing at the corners waiting for him.
Yeah.
So if they're able to put up that many points on them,
mm-hmm.
what do you think they're going to do to, IUPUI, Cleveland State, Youngstown State, and Detroit Mercy? Because the only thing Detroit Mercy is going to be able to do is try to outshoot them.
Oh, that's not going to happen, because if Detroit Mercy tries to outshoot Wright State will come back and just hit them in the mouth. Because they've got, and that's the thing too with Wright State, because they not only do they have that inside game that is bolstered by the fact that you have Loudon Love back and Grant Basile as well now emerging. Now you have all these kids who can shoot, and we're not. I mean, we're talking. We haven't even. We're talking about all these guys. I guess that, and it's funny because we're talking about this. We're talking about this as Skylar Potter is transferring, announcing he's going to the transfer portal, and maybe that's why. Maybe it's, he looked at the fact that you have all these weapons, and there's just not enough space for him anymore. I mean, that makes sense to me now, all things considered. Because when you have that many, when you have that many players that are that that have the potential to contribute every single game. I mean, if you feel like you're the odd man out, I can't really necessarily blame you to want to seek life elsewhere.
No, absolutely, and I think it's credit to Wright State, and they hired the right people at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure Matt and Kyle mentioned that as well, and I think that's probably it's true. It's absolutely true. Or it blows me away that That credit to Bob Grant over the AD over there for realizing that the potent, you know, and to think, I know we've talked about this, and maybe not you and I, but definitely me and Jimmy, to think we thought he was absolutely insane for getting rid of Billy Donlin. But man, Scott Nagy has just done such a good job at Wright State this year. And since he's been there, definitely worth the money, man.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
Billy Donlin hasn't done bad himself since leaving Wright State.
that is true. He is definitely that because Billy Donlin, of course, is over at Kansas City now. Yeah, he's definitely turned that program around too, and good timing too, because I believe they're going to be switching over. They're going back to the Summit from the WAC, so that's going to be good for them as well. But yeah, that's definitely But I that whole thing with the whole Billy Donlin situation was just so weird, because we know Billy Donlin can coach. It's just I guess just a matter of Scott Nagy coaching better, I suppose. But yeah, if you look at Wright State, they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. The other team, of course, that's at the top, of course, is Northern Kentucky. Now, Northern Kentucky has a different situation where they have the firepower, but their firepower is currently hurt right now. They went to UNC Greensboro this weekend. They lost by 17, but they're still without Jalen Tate, and they were also out without Dantes Walton, who Dantes Walton, of course, has been just shooting the lights out the entire non-conference. So if you're going into a team like Greensboro is a monster this year, and you expect to win without either of those two guys. I mean, I'm sure that not this year, absolutely not. I mean, it was definitely I wouldn't say it was a beatdown, but it was definitely. And you could tell that Northern Kentucky absolutely missed those guys. And that's the worst. I mean, yeah, that's the problem that, and I know, and I'm not sure what the timetable for Walton is. I think he might be out 3 games, I want to say. I think he's out at least 3 games, I want to say. And I don't know what the timetable for, and I honestly don't know what the timetable for Tate is, though I do believe he is going to be back in time for the conference schedule. I don't know, but yeah, going up against a team like UNC Greensboro this year, no, this is not a good year to do that.
Yeah, they beat Georgetown. I mean, is that saying anything anymore? Because
no, it's not.
But I mean, they had a solid game against Kansas. They lost by 12, and then they lost to NC State by 3. They beat a good Vermont team.
Yeah,
they're having an okay year.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate they have so many non-D1 teams on their schedule.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is true. Not too many, but definitely a couple.
Well, there's a couple, and then their conference isn't that strong either.
Really.
That could be a team that'd be a really good upset pick.
Yeah.
In tournament time, but yeah, Northern Kentucky. I mean, they've played a much stronger schedule than a lot of the Horizon League teams have, and they've done well.
That's true.
And I think I'm going to say about their schedule.
Yeah.
Too many non-D1s. 0 non-D1s is the correct amount of non-D1s to be playing.
Yeah.
But I mean, they beat Eastern Kentucky, who's supposed to be above average this year. Took out Miami, Ohio.
Yeah.
And Ball State.
Yeah.
So they're having a good year. They just got to get healthy before they play Milwaukee on Saturday.
I think that's going to be the big concern with Northern Kentucky is their health. I mean, we have seen them. We've not seen Jalen Tate this year, which I mean, probably a blessing in disguise, because it allowed Walton and Trevon Faulkner and Tyler Sharp to, step up. But they're going to need him for the conference. They're absolutely going to need him for the conference, no doubt. Will it hurt them against Milwaukee? I don't know. I'm not convinced of that yet.
Yeah, fighting Jimmy Lemke's aren't having a great year either.
Yeah, the fighting Jimmy Lemke's. Yeah, they're having an okay year, but they're not. Yeah, Milwaukee's not exactly setting the world on fire.
If U of D played this schedule, we'd have 2 losses.
And of course, Milwaukee, of course, is in yet another slump this year because Milwaukee has this weird streaky thing going on in which they just will lose games. They'll just lose straight games at a clip. I mean, Wisconsin, they lost. They played Wisconsin this weekend. It was no surprise that they lost to Wisconsin because Wisconsin and Kansas. I mean, they got their bye games at the end with Kansas and Wisconsin. There wasn't really much of a wiggle room on that one. But the other losses are to Drake and the Eastern Illinois. Really, George Washington isn't all that great. I mean, it's a team that but I will say they did beat Billy Donlin in Kansas City, though. I will say that, but that's losing 5 straight at the end of the non-conference schedule isn't exactly a crowning achievement, especially when you're going to spend the first weekend of the Horizon League schedule going up against Northern Kentucky and Wright State right off the bat. I mean, that could potentially be demoralizing.
I mean, if Northern Kentucky's not healthy, though, you would think they probably start off in a hole.
Possibly. I mean, I would say possibly, but I mean, again, you could see a path for Milwaukee to potentially win, but Northern Kentucky still has, they didn't lose everybody. You they still definitely have weapons on the Northern Kentucky end, and I do expect them to show up for the conference.
I think Northern Kentucky and Wright State will be fine if they can get into that second, third weekend.
Yeah.
If they can both get into that second or third weekend undefeated, they'll be all right. Milwaukee, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, this is where, even as bad as U of D's looked, I have to look at it and go, I think they're better than like 5 or 6 of these teams because at least they've played someone.
Potentially, yeah.
Northern Kentucky plays Milwaukee and Green Bay. Then they have Detroit, Mercy, and Oakland. If they're not healthy by January 3rd, they're not going to have very much fun.
No, they really aren't. That's true.
And if they're not healthy and Wright State is, it wouldn't shock me that Wright State's 4-0 after 2 weekends, and the Norse are 2-2.
Possibly.
Do we know when Sharp's coming back?
You mean Faulkner? Tyler Sharp's playing. Tyler Sharp was the only one who actually, one of the few guys who actually scored against Greensboro. He got 33 off of them. Unfortunately, nobody else did. Nobody else scored, so that was problematic because they pretty much shut down Trey Faulkner, so that wasn't very good. But yeah, I think you're talking about the third week. Yeah, going into. Yeah, so when you're talking about Northern Kentucky, so Northern Kentucky has Oakland and Detroit Mercy. They have Oakland. Hold on a second. Who do they got? So Northern Kentucky's got going up to Wisconsin, so they got to play. Northern Kentucky's got to play Milwaukee and Green Bay. Then they also have to play the second weekend. They're playing Detroit Mercy, and Oakland. The weekend after that, where are they at? The weekend after that, they're doing UIC and IUPUI. So I don't know. I mean, Northern Kentucky doesn't play Wright State until way later.
Right.
They don't play Wright State until the 24th of January. I mean, they're like near the tail. That's like near the tail end of the I think that's like the last game in the first half of the conference for them. First half of the conference slate for them. So they're going to go through the entire Horizon League schedule before they get to Wright State. And I don't doubt that once they get to that point, I mean, that's a month away. That's more than a month away. You would have to think that both Walton and Tate are going to be healthy and back in the lineup. So we should see a pretty nice knockdown drag out between those two teams, I would expect.
Between those two, but do you think it's going to allow Wright State to get a huge lead and they're not going to be able to catch up?
I don't know.
Because we don't know what this UIC team is.
No, we really don't. We're not gonna find out until they play Cleveland State on Saturday. Even though I don't think even then I don't think that's gonna be and even then I'm not sure about that. Because I legitimately don't know. And that also depends on what Cleveland State offense shows up that game. Defensively, as I mentioned before, defensively Cleveland State can square up. The problem is they can't. The problem they have is on the offensive side, where they have issues with the handling the ball and shooting from time to time, because they've proven that they will cough up the ball at will and can go on 5-minute scoring droughts like nobody's business. Does that show up against UIC? God, I hope not. But you also have UIC finally at full strength, finally have Marcusati back, and you'll notice too that when they got Marcusati back, now they have Marcusati, Jordan Blunt, and Tarkus Ferguson back in the lineup. They seem to be doing considerably better, as evidenced on Friday when they beat UC Irvine. And also, and again, that's going to be a big wild card too. What UIC does. And we still don't know the answer to that question.
I mean, I think we know just as much, really, as we did going into the season, that Northern Kentucky and Wright State are better than everyone else.
This is true.
UIC is in that stopgap, and then everyone else into a bargain.
I would legitimately say Green Bay is as well. Although losing Tank Hemphill for the years hurts bad. I think UIC and Green Bay are kind of in the same boat. And maybe we throw Oakland in there, but I don't think so. I think Oakland still has some kinks to work out, as we saw when they lost in overtime to frickin' Fairfield. They lost to Fairfield, man.
Green Bay only has 2 D1 wins.
Yeah.
They lost their best player, and I don't foresee it going well for them. Well, so how did Oakland lose to Fairfield yesterday?
I have no idea. I watched the game, and I'm not sure. They just, I don't know. It was a weird game. It was a weird game that they lost in overtime.
That's why Matt was so angry.
Yeah, because they lost in
overtime.
Yeah, it was not a good game. It was a really bad. Yeah, did you
see the sweater Campy was wearing?
I did see this with the golden bow. Yes, I did see that. Yes,
they allowed Jesus Cruz 23 points.
Yeah, probably not gonna win doing that. But yes,
I don't know if he's good because I don't think anyone follows Fairfield basketball.
Well, we don't, but we also, they're not in our conference, so I don't necessarily follow them. But
all of his points were from inside.
I will point out, by the way, that going into the game they were 2-7. That's probably not good.
This guy scored 23 points in the paint and from the free throw line, with 2 giants playing in the paint for Oakland.
Yeah.
One of whom had 18 points.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the shooting was bad. Well, this is how you know Oakland's having a bad day. 3 for 21 from downtown.
Yeah, you're never gonna win a game doing that. You're absolutely never gonna win a game doing that.
And Travis Bader Jr.
and I also know, and I know this because I follow Cleveland State, and they can't their 3-point shooting is probably the worst in the conference. Wow, that's nobody was on. I mean, seriously, nobody was on last night against Fairfield. Blake Lampman, who you can usually rely on for at least a couple, 2 or 3 3-pointers, he went 0 for 8. Kevin Kangu was 0 for 1 for 6. I mean, it was just it was and so that's problematic for them. It really is. Now, how does that now I guess the question then that therein lies, how does that translate? Because obviously Oakland and Detroit Mercy are playing the first game. What does that mean for Oakland? I honestly, as bad as that is, I don't necessarily see. I don't know if that's gonna really affect Oakland going into the Detroit Mercy game. I really don't.
I think it comes down to this: Oakland's going to shoot 2-point baskets.
Yep.
Detroit Mercy is going to shoot 3-point baskets. The only way Detroit Mercy wins is if they make more of those 3-point baskets, because no
really
one on
believe
Detroit
that's gonna
Mercy's
happen?
team. I'm not run off the reservation yet. I'm packing my things and getting ready.
A couple weeks ago.
My things are on my wagon, and I'm ready to go somewhere else. But you understand it being a Cleveland State fan.
Naturally.
I'm sure most people in this conference, anyone that listens to this podcast, get it.
Yeah.
I keep showing back up, hoping I'm going to be given a different result. And
I believe that's the technical definition of insanity, but go on.
Yeah, it is. I have this idea that Antoine Davis will score 30 points when he gets double covered, or he's not making shots. They'll give the ball to Brad, and Brad will score, and they'll beat Oakland, and it'll be bad. What's probably going to happen is they're probably going to lose by 20 or 25. And I'm going to have to sit and listen to Matt talk about it the entire time. Then go to dinner and listen to it for another hour. So that's probably going to be my Saturday. But I don't know. I think this is probably the worst Oakland team we've seen since they've been in the Horizon.
Really? I mean, they didn't really start last year on fire either. So they didn't exactly. Yeah, but then again, I mean, let's face it. Let's look at the reality of the situation with the entire Horizon League right now. You have 3 teams. You had 3 teams that are over 500, and one of them's Youngstown State. You have 3 teams. Everybody else is below 500. You have, right? Look, it's so bad too. I mean, Cleveland State and IUPUI, you kind of figured they were going to have their issues, but I mean, if you look at it, I mean, Milwaukee 5-7, Green Bay 5-8, Oakland and UIC are 5-8.
Detroit Mercy should have at least 5 wins.
Yeah. Cleveland State is 4-9, and honestly, I'm happy they're 4-9 because I didn't think they were going to be 4-9.
You didn't even think they were going to have a team.
I didn't think they were going to have a team. I thought it was going to be 3 guys and a bunch of guys from the rec center, and they're 4-9.
How's the kid from Saginaw doing?
Which one is that? Are you talking about Al Eichelberger? Oh my God, yeah, Al Eichelberger is doing outstanding. He had 23. He had another double against Eastern Tennessee's ETSU yesterday. Obviously, they lost because ETSU is just a monster. But yeah, this has been a really good season this has actually been a really, really good season for Eichelberger. I'm happy for him. Because last year he kind of faded away a little bit, but at this point in time, he has kind of taken the dominant role in that front court, which Cleveland State absolutely needs because their front court rotation has kind of been shortened up a lot. But yeah, it's good that he's coming up, and I really think he's now at the point where he might be able to surprise some of these big guys coming in, because there's not a lot in the Horizon League, but you never know. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Like I said, I think the defense at Cleveland State's going to win them a couple of games where they shouldn't.
Yeah, and they got a easy opponent in IUPUI to start off with.
Damn right they do. Of course, they start they start off at UIC, which is
do. Okay.
Yeah, not so easy, but it is.
When do they play UIC?
Saturday. They play Saturday.
28. Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Youngstown's schedule. Yep, you're right.
Yes. Yeah, they're playing. Yeah. The irony of ironies. The Cleveland, the conference schedule, and I'm gonna have a fun time. I personally am gonna have a fun time following the Horizon League. I know some of you may know. I think I mentioned this. I mentioned this in the podcast previously, but I am relocating from Ohio to Valparaiso.
What?
And yes,
Why?
I'm going to be a full-time Valparaisan. I believe that's the term. I'm sure that but and Saturday and that Saturday is the day that I pack everything in the truck and get a move on. So
what are we moving to Valparaiso for?
Family.
So you've just added one liberal vote to their.
I certainly did. I know.
Very few.
I know. I didn't. Yeah, I know this, and so
your dog's not black, is he?
Yeah, actually, yes, Harry is.
Oh, well, then you're helping the population.
Okay, you know what? No, that's just dude. That's terrible.
I remember how horrible those people were. That is like Hickory, Indiana. Except it's not. It's a real place.
It really isn't. It really isn't. And now that I'm going to be a resident of this, I'm now going to be officially offended by that. So, good call, Karic.
Hey, I remember how angry they were about some Sharpies and some people swearing, and it ruined their lives.
Oh my God! You realize that nobody even pays attention to that? They're in the Valpo's in the Valley now. Nobody gets a rat's ass about Detroit Mercy and Valpo anymore. Sorry, they don't.
And they just got rid of their soccer program.
Yeah. Oh, people were pissed off about that too.
They were good, man.
No,
that was bad.
So enough about Valpo. I'll probably talk about that a bunch of times during the conference schedule and make everybody sad that they got replaced with IUPUI.
It is sad.
It is sad because IUPUI was a panic move, but we already know that. So anyway, that's going to wrap the show up for us. Karic, thank you once again for joining us, filling in for Matt. Again, on Twitter, Karic_Jones. I'm sure we'll see some stuff from you on HorizonRoundtable.com because he's still writing about Detroit Mercy. And as always, you can find, speaking of Horizon Roundtable, that's where you can find all our podcast episodes, as well as any podcast app out there. We're everywhere now. And of course, you can find us on your Amazon or Google devices. So that's going to do it. And thanks for listening.